Okay, so at 6 o'clock, we'll go ahead and get started. I'm going to end the poll. Like I said, if you didn't get a chance to complete it, we'll relaunch it at the end of the meeting. But welcome, hello. This is the Mershon Drive Traffic Calming Meeting #1. On behalf of the City of Ann Arbor, I'd just like to say thank you all for joining us. This is an opportunity to engage with community members and the neighborhood or the project area. So these traffic calming projects, they rely almost solely on resident feedback. So we really appreciate and encourage participation. Throughout the presentation, we'll have a couple opportunities, and I'll go over a couple introductory slides before we get into the actual presentation. So get introductions out of the way. My name's Christy Thullen. I'll be presenting tonight. I work for Wade Trim. The traffic calming team for Mershon Drive is a partnership between the City of Ann Arbor and Wade Trim. Wade Trim's an engineering firm based here in Southeast Michigan. We've been contracted by the city to assist with their traffic calming projects. This includes design work, project management, hosting public meetings, sending out communications to the public. From the Wade Trim side, there's a couple of us working on these projects. So we've got Chris Wall, Lori Pollock, and myself. And just if you see our names or faces or the Wade Trim logo throughout this project, just know we're working on behalf of the City of Ann Arbor. And then naturally with this partnership, we're working closely with Ann Arbor City staff. There are a handful of city staff members and departments that we coordinate with throughout the projects, but specifically, we've been working with Andrea, Chris, and Cyrus. So this is our meeting agenda for tonight. Most of tonight's time is going to be dedicated to the meeting #1 portion under section 3. That's where we'll review the devices of our starter idea, or we'll review devices, we'll present the starter idea, and then collect feedback. So just a couple slides on technology overview. If you're joining from a computer or using the Zoom app, there are going to be two ways of asking questions and providing feedback. You can either virtually raise and lower your hand using the button at the bottom of your screen. This is going to notify me when that you'd like to speak. So when recognized, I'll allow you to unmute yourself. If you'd rather type a question or comment out, you can press the Q&A button that's also at the bottom of your screen. A chat box is going to pop up. You can type in the text box and press send to submit your message. Just be sure that if you'd like to send feedback anonymously, make sure you check the box before you hit send. And I don't see anybody in attendance who's joining by dial-in, but in the future, if you ever if you attend a meeting by dialing in by phone, you can request to speak by dialing *9. You'll be recognized to speak by the last 3 digits of your phone number, and then you'll be unmuted. Unfortunately, you won't be able to participate in use the Q&A function if you're calling in, but you'll still be able to let us know you'd like to speak. And then throughout the presentation, we'll be asking for some feedback that'll be requested through Zoom's polling feature. Again, if you're on a computer using the app and I launch a poll, it'll just automatically pop up for you. After you answer the polling question, press submit. Once the poll closes, I'll share the results. You can either press close to stop viewing the results, or once we're ready to move on, I'll just automatically close them for everyone. If you're dialing in by phone, you won't be able to use this function. You will have to use *9 to raise your hand and share your answer to the poll. it's not entirely anonymous in that sense, just because we have to recognize you by the last 3 digits of your phone number. But otherwise, if you're on their computer on the app, it'll be anonymous polling. And then just to test it, I want to launch another poll or launch a poll question. And this is just asking if you live in the project area. Project area is Mershon Drive between Scioto Church Road and Delaware Drive. Go ahead and give everyone a couple of moments to put in answers. If you're having any trouble, raise your hand or use the Q&A. But I see everyone's answered. You should be able to see the results in a moment. So it looks like everyone in attendance is part of the project area. And I'll go ahead and stop sharing the results. And one last slide just on etiquette before we get started. Just as a reminder during the presentation, especially during any feedback from your neighbors, your fellow community members, please just keep these Zoom norms in mind. I do my best to start right on time so we can end on time. We have this meeting scheduled up until 7:30. So I just want to be respectful of everyone's time. Please raise your hand to be recognized to talk. We'll only have one person speaking at a time. Everyone's going to be provided a chance to speak before we have any repeat speakers. If you are speaking, please move to a quiet area. Try to silence any of the background noise. And when talking, make sure you're speaking loud and clear so everyone can hear you. Be respectful of other ideas and perspectives. Avoid finger pointing. Try to differentiate between fact and opinion. And then lastly, inappropriate written and or verbal comment or language, including personal attacks and accusations, will just result in the attendee being removed from the meeting. So zero tolerance for that kind of stuff, but I haven't had an issue with it yet, so I don't anticipate it. But if there's anything I've missed, if anyone's not able to hear me very well, we'll pause. Just let me know. Use the Q&A or raise your hand. And I'll do this throughout the presentation quite a bit. I'll just pause just to let everyone kind of digest the slide and then provide some feedback. But I'm not seeing any activity, so I'll move on into our actual presentation. So what is traffic calming? The focus in traffic calming is to make changes that will not only make the road safer for drivers, but safer for pedestrians, wheelchair users, bicyclists, scooters, etc. We want to make it safe for everyone who uses the road or everyone who's using the streets. There are a lot of examples of traffic calming in Ann Arbor. You'll see them in some of the slides, but up on the screen it's just kind of a general definition of traffic calming. Just the point of the slide is just to let you know that it's not a new concept, certainly not in Ann Arbor, but the goal here is to make the roads safer. And then the traffic calming program in Ann Arbor specifically is designed to provide residents with a formal process for engaging with the city in a partnership to perform a technical analysis of traffic concerns on local streets and then explore potential solutions using the fundamentals of traffic calming. The city has a 5-step program. Wade Trim is currently assigned with is currently assisting with step 2 through a portion of step 5. I'll briefly describe each of the steps, but there is a guidebook available online. You received a very tiny printed version of it in the mail with your initial package, but it has all the detail. If you'd like to review anything after this meeting, I'll direct you to the website a couple times throughout tonight. So step 1 is the resident-initiated petition. Mershon Drive, the project started with one of your neighbors acting as a petitioner. who submitted a request to the traffic calming program for Mershon Drive between Scioto Church Road and Delaware Drive. After defining the project area, the petitioner gathered signatures from other residents who also live in this area. So hopefully I recognize some names on the attendance, but hopefully you've had a chance to sign the petition. You're, aware of the project and this effort going on since initially went out. The requirement for the traffic calming program to accept the request is that at least 50% of the defined project area must support the project. And also a preliminary technical study must result in at least 10 points based on the criteria that the city sets. So Mershon Drive collected signatures from 76% of addresses. And then the preliminary study resulted in 33 points. There's a breakdown of those points on our project website, but this this project area is more than qualified to participate in traffic calming. And then step two, that's where Wade Trim stepped in. We sent out mailers with an initial questionnaire to all of the project area residents, just to gather feedback on specific concerns you may have, what experiences you may have previously had with traffic calming, and just kind of introduce you to the program and the process. The requirement for the questionnaire to move on to step three is that at least 50% of those who participate in the questionnaire must support the project moving forward. So whereas the initial petition was based on a percentage of all the residents within the area, this initial questionnaire was based on a percentage of who even filled out the questionnaire, who returned the questionnaire, completed it. So of the responses that we received, 85% were in favor. And if I remember correct, we did have a high number of people participating in the questionnaire. This is just a very small summary of it. There is a detailed summary of the results on the project website that's listed there above at the top. In general, results of the questionnaire indicated that speeding and visibility of pedestrians were common concerns. Mershon slopes down with the peak at Scioto Church Road down to Delaware Drive, so that was listed as a contributing factor to the speeding that's been observed. Additionally, there were issues with compliance at the stop signs on Delaware Drive. That was in a couple of the responses. Some of the important pedestrian crossings that were mentioned were both crosswalks at the ends of the project area. But it was also noted that there's a lot of mid-block crossing observed just because of the park over there on the east side. So that's what I took away from the results of the questionnaire summary. Again, I'll pause here. If anyone has anything they'd like to add, you can use the Q&A, you can raise your hand. But that's the information that we've collected so far from everyone. So if hopefully that's painting an accurate picture of the concern on Mershon, but if there's anything we're missing, please feel free to add. Okay, we did get a comment. So it seems like the park is pretty busy. It's an active area. So it looks like you've got on-street parking available. A lot of foot traffic. There's a lot of sports practices that the park is used for. Thank you. Okay, don't see anything else. Keep moving forward. Oh, one more comment. Lots of kid traffic for the sports walk. Oh, and walking to and from school. We've got the school nearby as well. So this is within a school zone. It's kind of cut off in the photo, but okay. So I think we've highlighted some of the main concerns uh, with Mershon Drive. So step three, that's where we are today. This is mostly orientation, so it's like I'm going through how the program is going to work. Um, but before we present the starter idea, we'll just go through an overview of the toolbox that is described in the program's guidebook. Um, Before I do that, I'll launch another poll just to see how familiar people may be with the guidebook. If you had a chance to um, review it before today, if you're, just familiar with it, maybe from other projects that have been in the area. Okay, so it looks like we're a little bit of a mix, but it seems like for the most part, people have at, at least been able to skim it, or if not, they're pretty familiar with how the program works. But we do have someone, at least one person who may not be as familiar. I mean, I'm going to go through it regardless, um, but it's good to know. Before before I get into the toolbox, I just have to clarify because of the structure of this program, the designs, or because of the current structure of this program, I should say, the designs we propose are limited to only the device toolbox, and that's in the guidebook. Uh, that's our North Star in all of this. That's what we are able to use when we're planning solutions for traffic calming. Um, this means that if it's not in the toolbox, it is not an option for this project. So some of the commonly suggested solutions that unfortunately are not included within the ability of this program are stop signs, cul-de-sac or street closures, police enforcement, new sidewalk installation, and removal of existing devices. If you would like additional information on any of these topics, there are some resources listed in the guidebook and on the A2Gov website. I know some of the concerns that were raised in the questionnaire responses are unfortunately not part of the traffic calming program, such as the stop sign. Um, I can provide information and resources for those topics at the end of the presentation if anyone would like, but for now, we'll only be focusing on what the program can do. So in the traffic calming guidebook, specifically pages 9 through 12, I believe, um, there is the device toolbox. Devices are grouped into things you drive over and things you drive around. Um, for the sake of time, um, there are going to be devices that are in the guidebook, but I'm not going to review in this presentation, and that's only because they're not feasible for this specific project, either from an engineering perspective, or they don't meet requirements set by the city stakeholders who provide input prior to this meeting, specifically the fire department, um, AAA Ann Arbor Transit, and school, public school busing, sorry. So within the devices you drive over, these are devices that slow traffic by creating discomfort if traveled over at a speed exceeding 25 miles an hour. Um, the device toolbox presents four devices that fall under this category: speed humps, speed tables, raised crosswalks, and raised intersections. Um, Raised crosswalks and raised intersections for now are currently under review by the engineering department because we've been running into situations where we're not able to meet ADA guidelines, Americans with Disability Act. We're not able to meet those guidelines and make these crosswalks or intersections compliant. So for now, they're under review. Not to say that they won't be a possibility in the future, but for now, we're not able to propose these devices. But we've got speed humps. So you've got a typical diagram of a speed hump on the left, and then there's an example from Wells Street shown on the right. Speed humps are typically 12 feet long, 3 inches high at the most. They're 3 inches high. They have a parabolic shape, so like a hump, and the maximum is 3 feet, 3 inches. Oh my gosh, if I said 3 feet, I'm sorry. 3 inches is the maximum height, and they extend the full width of the street except for the gutter. Studies have found benefits of speed hump treatments may include speed reduction, traffic volume reduction, and crash reduction. There are a couple other notes regarding speed humps. So that height, 3 inches, the maximum height, that's designed for the ease of bike usage and bike safety. I know there are examples throughout the city where speed humps were installed prior to that standard, and sometimes that's used as a reference. As of now, the city standard they will not make exceptions for that. Um, the goal of a speed hump is not to destroy someone's vehicle. Um, and at the same time, we have to balance safety for all road users, including bicycles. If previously permitted, vehicles can park on speed humps. So in the example on the right, you do see a vehicle that's parked on the speed hump. As long as parking was legal before, it won't be a problem if once the speed hump is installed. Additionally, trash cans can also be placed on speed humps if necessary. And then the next slide is a speed table, which is very similar to a speed hump. This actually, um, it's a raised device that also extends the full width of the street, not including gutter. Typically, though, they're 22 feet long. They have tapered edges, and then the center, there's a flat, usually 10-foot flat center platform. Again, the maximum height is 3 inches. And so you got the diagram, a typical diagram on the left. And then this example here on the right is Glenwood Road near Washtenaw. Studies have found benefits of speed table treatments may include traffic volume reduction as well as crash reduction. And then some of the other things to mention is the speed reduction with speed tables is typically less than a speed hump. They usually are recommended when there's a bus route in the area. Sometimes public schools prefers a speed table. The platform width that can be customized. The height is designed for ease of bike usage and bike safety. And if previously permitted, like with the speed hump, you can park on the speed table and you can put your trash cans there if necessary. But, but yes, I think so far Glenwood might be the only example that I'm aware of within the traffic calming program that's been installed with the traffic calming program. And the note about it being preferred by uh, public schools for the school bus use. This did go out. We did reach out to our stakeholders. Like I said, Ann Arbor Public Schools is a stakeholder, and I haven't had any feedback from them that they would prefer a speed table over a speed hump in this area. So I don't think we have to limit ourselves to that. So of the four devices that you drive over, speed hump and speed table are kind of our only options at this time. But if you have any questions about those two devices, please raise your hand, use the Q&A function. I'll take a breath here before I move on to the other section of the toolbox. Oh, Jan, I see you have your hand raised. You can go ahead and unmute yourself if you'd like to speak.
This is Bob. We Jan and I have driven on Brook Street, and we thought that there were speed tables there, but maybe they are speed humps
On Brook Street, Brooks and
between Mixedwood and Miller.
between Mixedwood and Miller.
And I think they were just replaced. I think they used to be humps and now they're tables.
Oh, okay.
I don't know though. I never measured it.
Let's see if I can take a look real quick.
And it's my opinion that they work well.
Oh, good. Okay.
They were very smooth to drive on when we drove on them last weekend.
I believe there are some raised intersect or raised crosswalks there, which those tend to be a little wider.
Oh, that could be.
Almost like a speed table because they have to accommodate like the width of the crosswalk in them. So I know there's some raised crosswalks there.
Oh, maybe that's what they are.
Yes, that's I think this from if Google's giving me the most recent image, I believe it's
I
a
think they
raised.
just redid them last summer.
Oh, okay, okay.
Did some sort of work there.
I did get someone who mentioned there's typically no school bus traffic on this block. Thank you. Oh, and then I've got another one here. Wondering if speed bumps or tables have any effect on drainage that you know of. So I'll go back to the diagram. So where's my pointer? So if you see this strip here would be the gutter. And then this image isn't super great because it looks like there might be leaves or there might not be a gutter. Let me go look at the other one. Oh, here's a better one. So with the speed hump in this example, this is the gutter. This is where all of your stormwater runs to catch basins. This is where the drainage happens. The speed humps do not go into that area. So they keep them within the roadway and out of the gutter. So there would be there shouldn't be any negative impacts to drainage. And then I'm sorry, Bob and Jan, if there's I didn't know if there's anything else that you had wanted to add on your experience with Brook Street.
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. I didn't see any other questions or Q&A pop up. I'll go ahead and move on to the next section. Things you drive around. So this is the other group of devices that are in our toolbox. These are things that you would drive around. This type of device slows traffic by creating a perception of less room for error, just to visually or physically narrow the roadway. When that happens, there might be a perception that the road is narrow, but we're still making sure that there's adequate room for vehicles to travel. Oh, and I did get a comment, just a correction, that a few years ago, Ann Arbor Public Schools was using Mershon as a bus resting spot prior to pickup. Okay, thank you for that context. I might have to reach out to public schools just to make sure we're aware of all of the activity that they might have on Mershon. But so in the device toolbox, there are actually 7 devices that fall under this category of things you drive around. Um, we are restricted on quite a few of these devices to meet standards for the fire department. A roadway, roads have to be pretty wide for some of these devices. So just because the fire department, they need at least 20 feet of flat, unobstructed roadway. So takes away a lot of the devices from the toolbox, but we've got curb extensions and chicanes, which are just a different arrangement of a curb extension. That is something that we're able to use. And these 2 slides are a little repetitive, but curb extensions, they can be used in several designs: curb bump outs, mid-block bump outs, and chokers. So shown on the right is an example of a bump out at Granger Avenue and White Street. Curb extensions, they just act as an extension of the curb line to physically and visually tighten the corridor by narrowing street width. Not by a whole lot, but I mean enough that you feel it when you're driving, or you're aware of it when you're driving. If you do one on each side, 2 parallel curb bump outs, that can be used to create a choke point, or a single lane width passageway. If you alternate them, that would be a chicane effect. With curb extensions, you do have to consider drainage, because you are taking away, or you are shifting where the gutter would be. They may require loss of on-street parking. They can cause debris to collect around the device, just because the typical drainage flow is interrupted. So leaves or debris, they may collect and need maintenance more frequently. Their width, like I said, we don't get out of hand with how far we go into the street, but we do have to make sure that we're maintaining that 20 feet width for emergency vehicles. A couple other notes: chokers, 1 or 2 lane chokers, there are studies that have shown they can result in speed reduction. They've shown to produce a minor reduction in traffic volume. And then 1 lane chokers, they can be effective, but on their own, but you do have to rely on signing and just driver courtesy, because you'll have a tight point where only 1 vehicle can go through. So there are other things that you have to consider when installing, just on driver behavior. If we install a curb extension either at an intersection like the example in Granger, or if you do it mid-block, in the middle of a street, this can help shorten pedestrian crossing distances. It can improve pedestrian visibility, and it can also help eliminate illegal parking. So sometimes there are issues where vehicles are parking too close to the intersection, and it makes it difficult to see other vehicles or pedestrians or bikes. So it can help alleviate that as well. And then this is just an example of that chicane, that alternating bump out that's also within this family of curb extensions. I didn't have an example from Ann Arbor, so this one is from the Virginia Department of Transportation. But like other curb extensions, chicanes can, or I'm sorry, chicanes, they do require drainage consideration. They can result in loss of on-street parking. They can require more maintenance just because of the debris that may collect, although it looks like this one might have uh, installed so that there was still space in the gutter for drainage to flow through. Um, and they also have to maintain 20 feet for emergency response vehicles. And then one last device here. This is the neighborhood gateway treatment. These are, this would be a physical landmark that just indicates a change from a higher speed road to a lower speed residential or commercial area. Neighborhood gateway treatments can increase awareness for residential speeds, but they may also require additional right of way. So if, there's not a lot of city owned space for this installation, where it encroaches on someone's property, there would have to be agreements in place for that installation. Any kind of landscaping or installation maintenance costs would actually fall on the neighborhood or the adjacent property owner. So it is an option, specifically with this project. It wouldn't be impossible, but given the surrounding neighborhood on Delaware, and then just the change in speeds between South Church and Mershon, we don't see it being super effective, but just to make you aware of, or if it's something that people want to explore further, just wanted to make sure to share it. So again, I'll pause if there are any questions about devices you drive around. You can feel free to use the chat or raise your hand. Not seeing any activity, so I'll keep moving forward. If you want to see more examples of the devices that are in the toolbox or the toolkit, there's an interactive map that you can visit at an A2Gov at the traffic calming website. There's an interactive map. You can see all of the other traffic calming projects that have taken place in the past, ones that are, still in progress. This is an old image, so I don't believe Mershon's included. Oh wait, I think that's Mershon right there. But you'll be able to see all of the other projects that have or are going on in the city. So moving on, we'll present the starter idea, which is just a draft plan that we've created based on, engineering judgment, existing conditions on Mershon, the data collection that's taken place in the preliminary study, and the feedback from the initial questionnaire, as well as the feedback that was provided in the initial petition. There will be opportunity to ask questions to discuss each device, discuss any changes you might want to see, just keeping in mind that the project is limited to only the devices I just reviewed. And it's also subject to additional engineering and design. So this is just a starter idea. It's just a launch pad for conversation. So here it is. What we're proposing as a starter are 3 speed humps throughout Mershon. I'll point out, if you haven't had a chance to look at any of the results from the petition's point qualification, the matrix of points, like I said earlier, Mershon received 33 points. There is a breakdown of it on the website. So a couple things to point out from that, though, is that the average speed was over 25 miles an hour. I think it was like 26.5, but the 85th percentile speed was 32.3 miles per hour. So that means 85% of the people who are traveling up and down Mershon were going 32.3 miles an hour or less. So at the most 32. So that's way over the speed limit. There's a lot of, I think the percent of people who violate the speed limit was 62%. I will say though, there were traffic counts taken just to count the number of vehicles that were up and down. Wasn't super high, but knowing that there's a lot of park activity there, it could have very well been taken on a day that, you know, there happened to be less activity. So this is our starter idea. We're spacing the speed humps as equally as possible, equidistant as possible. We have to, you know, consider if there are other utilities in the area, making sure we're clear of fire hydrants. That's another requirement that we have to meet, and then avoiding driveways, things like that. So that's why it's not a uniform distance between each device. This is the aerial of the entire project area. So I'll just go through somewhat of a zoom in on each of the device. These slides are going to be repetitive because they're all speed humps. You know, the output is similar or the same for all of them. This first one, it's between 2185 and 2186 Mershon near Delaware. Again, things to keep in mind is, you know, we're not disrupting drainage. Where there's legal street parking, you can still park on a speed hump. That's not an issue. You know, we're installing this. This will be installed to the city standard, which is a maximum of 3 inches height for safety of vehicles and bikes to travel over. Trash pickup is, you know, trash cans, recycling bins, those are still permissible on a speed hump if needed. And I might repeat this again later, but speed humps can have an impact on their own, but they're most effective when used in a series. So part of the reason that we're recommending 3 of them, I think, you know, we could have done an alternate of speed humps and curb extensions, but I know that with the park being so active, I wasn't sure if the neighborhood wanted to give up any of the on-street parking. But these speed humps need to work together. So, you know, we can look at one individual one, but the reality is that the benefit is when we're looking at all 3 of them or the whole series of them together and trying to space them throughout the entire project area. And then 250, 200 to maybe even like 500, maybe a little wiggle room around that, is the spacing that we would stick to for for a desired speed limit of 25 miles an hour, just because, you know, we don't want to give any vehicles too much room because, you know, there's sometimes it's perception, but a lot of times it's reality where, you know, someone slows down to go over a speed hump, but then they pick up speed right away. So they, you know, try to race between the speed humps. Again, sometimes that's perception, other times it's reality. So we don't want to, when our goal is 25 miles an hour, we don't want to put so much space in between the devices that people do have a chance to, you know, maintain higher speeds but at the same time, we don't want to just fill the entire roadway with speed humps and put them so close together that you're just, you know, crawling along the street. And it might be nice to keep people out if we were able to use these as cut through deterrents, but you know, you'll have to consider as someone who lives on the street that, you know, that's probably not something that you want to have to experience daily. I did get a question, are snowplows affected by speed humps or tables? No, and I know that the city, so I know with curb extensions, there's a little more effort that has to go into making sure everyone's on the same page. But no, this isn't something that would have a great impact on snowplows or street cleanup. I know the city will communicate changes to maintenance, um, and that's usually more important when there are curb extensions because those can really get damaged by snowplows if there's not advanced marking taking place. But no, we don't see um, any extreme issues or any issues with snowplows on these devices. So the second one, this one's near the park access, um, outside of 2126 Mershon Drive. Like I said, they're spaced intentionally, just because the road isn't, you know, perfect with other devices that are out there and utilities. Like all of these, let me see, all of these dots here are all different utilities. Like this is a sanitary sewer. This is a storm sewer, and these are catch basins. So these are all things that we kind of have to consider when we're placing the devices, and as well as, you know, we don't want to put anything too close to a driveway, or, you know, when they're like here, there are staggered driveways, so sometimes that takes away a lot of options on placement. But so that's that second one. And then the third speed hump is near 2046 and 2055, although the address is cut off, I apologize. Mershon. And as I said before, that I know pedestrian traffic is a huge part of this street, with the park, and I know mid-block crossings were pointed out as a concern in the initial questionnaire. Um, Unfortunately, new crosswalks, new ramp connections, those aren't part of this program. Um, so, you know, I can understand if there may have been an expectation to see some new crossings mid-block here. But for now, these devices that we're proposing are targeted at reducing speeds, since the data that we had collected showed that there is a speeding issue on here. So we believe these speed humps will help reduce and lower those speeds. Next couple of slides will just be polling on how we feel about each of the devices. But before I do that, I'll stop again. Were there any questions about the devices, or were there any questions on, why we didn't choose other devices, or maybe if there are mixed feelings about them, or other things that might have been preferred? And Bob and Janet, I see you've got your hand raised. You can go ahead and unmute if you'd like.
Are humps preferred over tables in this length of an area? I was wondering how it is that the hump was chosen rather than a table.
Oh, so sorry, I might have just skipped through that. I might have just said that a little too quickly earlier, but usually we'll only recommend a speed table when Ann Arbor Public Schools is requesting that we stick to tables just for the sake of their buses. I know there was a comment earlier about Mershon being used by Ann Arbor Public Schools as bus storage, prior to school release. And I'll have to go back. This got sent out for this meeting. The starter idea did get sent out to all of the stakeholders, and we hadn't received any pushback on anything or any concern. But it's definitely something that we can clarify with them. The other thing was that speed reduction tends to be slightly less when you're putting in a speed table rather than a speed hump. Um, I don't think it's a drastic difference, but it definitely would be reduced.
Thank
So
you.
oh, you're welcome. So with kind of planning some of these things out, we usually lean towards the speed hump first. And then if Ann Arbor Public Schools, or if there seems to be a greater need, we will consider a speed table. But also sorry, I'm going to go back to the high view slide. Um, based just with some of the driveway placements here, it would be kind of difficult for us. I don't know offhand. It's definitely something I could look into if there's interest, but there's not a lot of room for us, a lot of options for us to place a speed table, just because they're so much longer than the speed hump is. And mid block might be a desired area, although we wouldn't want to encourage people using the speed table as a crosswalk, just because it is kind of a similar layout where it's, you have the flat center portion. I don't know if we'd want to encourage people to use that as a crosswalk. But we also have to keep in mind with fire hydrants, like this would have been a spot to maybe consider, but we have to maintain a certain amount of clearance from fire hydrants. So that's why this area between these two devices is a little longer. But if there is interest in looking at speed tables over speed humps, that's definitely something we can look into further for the next iteration of this design. And I don't see any other hands, and I don't see any questions or comments in the QA. So I'll move forward with the polling questions. There'll be one for each of the devices. If anything pops up, feel free, use the chat freely. Raise your hand. Don't feel like you have to. If anything comes to mind, please feel free to reach out. So this is on device one. This is the speed hump between 2185, 2186 Mershon towards Delaware. There's a handful of options in this poll that I just launched, but I don't see anyone, based on the question we had earlier, didn't see anyone who wasn't part of the project area. So just looking to see if you would support this device, this location. Again, if there's any new questions or thoughts that rise, please use the Q&A or raise your hand. And as a reminder, the Q&A, you can use it anonymously. Okay. So we did get, I've launched the results, or I've shared the results. So we do have a couple who aren't supportive, are not in support of this device. If after the meeting, if you feel more comfortable, I would, if it's something, a matter of the location, just speed humps in general, I know sometimes it's mixed reaction with speed humps. Sometimes people love them and sometimes people really, really dislike them. So if there's anything else that, we can talk through, this would be a good opportunity to do it. Otherwise, I'll have my contact information at the end of the meeting and you can reach out to me outside of tonight if you prefer. But I'll go on to the second one. Same question. This is for device 2. This is mid-block, so kind of halfway point of the project area. This is outside the park, outside of 2126 Mershon. Again, if you support this device, if you support this device's location, if there's anything else, if your thoughts are yes, but that there's anything that we can talk through or get feedback on. So we got someone who got a comment that says, couldn't 2 speed bumps achieve the desired results since the distance is so short and the bumps are so close? Yes. This roadway is long enough to only accommodate, this roadway is long enough or short enough, I guess I could say, where, 2 speed humps could be seen as sufficient. Kind of avoided placing something too far up towards Scioto Church Road just because of the incline. So it's definitely possible for us to, just limit it to 2 devices and increase the spacing a little bit. If that's something that we see being more, if you, as residents, if you see 2 devices being sufficient, we can definitely come up with a configuration that only has 2. I will add a question at the end of this. But I'll give it another moment. I think I don't have full participation on this question yet. But I'll say go ahead and answer this question as the plan stands with 3 devices, and then we'll discuss and I'll add a poll question regarding 2 devices. afterwards. So if you didn't get a chance to answer, I'll give you another moment or two. Otherwise, we'll move on. Okay. So it seems like we're in favor of this device, this speed hump, and this location, which I thought ahead of time was maybe the best one. So I've got a comment. It is along the park that there can be the most kids on sidewalks and crossing the street. So this would be a good place for a device. I agree. This is probably where you see the most activity with people crossing, and vehicles pulling up and driving around. Okay, lastly, we'll launch the same question for device 3, the speed hump near 2055, 2046 Mershon. Okay, cool. Got everyone to answer that one. So a little bit of pushback on this one as well. Let me add that other question. 1 second. How do I want to word this? Okay, let me launch this one here. Huh. Mm. Okay, I apologize. It is not letting me launch it. It let me add a new question, but it's not letting me launch it. So I apologize. Oh, maybe I need to stop sharing this one first. Okay, let's try this again. So going back to the comment asking um, whether 2 speed humps could achieve, desired results. Could we just do that rather than having three devices? Which I agree. There's a short enough distance on the street where we could remove one of the devices, change the spacing a little bit between the other two, and just have 2 speed humps installed and still see traffic calming within Mershon. So if that's something that you would prefer to see in the next iteration, please vote. I'll also open it up to discussion if there's any concerns or any other questions people might have with doing that, with removing the device. So I've got no preference to two versus three. Okay. Thank you. And in general, I would say less can be more. It would be effective. You definitely see reduction in speed on Mershon. I would say not that three is overkill, but they're overdoing it, but it's hard to say, also we only, if we don't want to put too much in the street, like, I definitely didn't want to propose four on this street, because it might be difficult, you might have done all of these things and then not really know where the effectiveness came from, like, how, whether or not two had been effective before considering additional devices. So it looks like, we're willing to see two devices in the plan, but it also seems like leaning toward not really a preference between the two options. If something comes to mind after the meeting, please reach out and let me know, and can think about things a little more before we have our next meeting. But so that was it with the chunk of tonight's content. Next couple slides are just going through the rest of the process and next steps. Over the next couple of weeks, we'll post today's presentation as well as a recording to the project website, and also post a summary of the polling and use that feedback from tonight and any feedback I might get afterwards within those next couple weeks, and create a preliminary plan. So that'll just be another iteration of the design on Mershon. Next step will be step 4. That's meeting number 2. It's got 2 parts to it. There's a self-guided tour and another Zoom meeting. So the Zoom meeting is scheduled for May 29th. And for the self-guided tour, you'll receive a mailing packet at least 2 weeks prior to the Zoom meeting. I try to get them out earlier than that, but usually it's about the 2-week mark. The packet's going to contain a device. It's going to contain device images and descriptions, which are pretty much the same as the slides that we showed earlier. You'll receive information on the devices that are being used in the preliminary plan or in the self-guided tour, and you can either do a walkthrough of Mershon and see where those devices will be. We will mark the device locations in the street approximately at the location that we're aiming for. Spray paint on the pavement. We'll have a sign out there as well, a temporary sign near each of the locations as well. You could also do a self-guided tour on Google on Google Street View using the packet, if you prefer to do that. But we'll be out there in the neighborhood marking that way you can see how much space these devices will take up, physically see in person how much space these devices would take up, where we're suggesting that they be installed, and get a better feel of what it'll look like prior to the Zoom meeting. And then that meeting, May 29th, it'll just be very similar to today, except it won't have all of the background information on the project or the program. It'll be pretty straightforward. We'll present the plan, we'll answer questions, we'll do polling just like we did today. Hopefully have, if there are questions or concerns about the preliminary, hopefully we can work those out and discuss them. And if there are any changes that we need to make, that second meeting will be kind of the last opportunity for us to get input. Comment or question: are we to assume that speed humps will be coming and that only the final number is to be determined, or are they still not finalized? So based on today, I would say we're gonna stick with speed humps and just decide whether or not we're gonna do a layout of 2 or 3. This is driven by resident feedback. So, I know that we had some of the responses that said they did not support speed humps. I hear that and I very much respect it. I just need, it's good to have some more dialogue if there's something else we prefer instead of speed humps. If if someone's opposed to the devices in general, that's really important to understand and to hear from people. But based on today, my first thoughts are the preliminary plan will still be speed humps. It'll just be deciding whether or not we reduce it to just 2 rather than 3. Long-winded answer to your question, but hopefully that answered. Okay, so then after meeting 2, the last step will be final polling. Like I said, after that second meeting, that's kind of our last opportunity to discuss any changes that could be anticipated. But we'll finalize the plan, create a final plan, and then send it out to all of the project area residents. So final polling looks like this. It's all the residents and property owners. You'll be mailed another packet, which will include a cover letter, a copy of the final plan, and the final poll. So just like the initial questionnaire, you'll have the option of submitting your poll by mail or completing it online with the SurveyMonkey link. There will be a deadline for you to participate in that final poll to continue moving forward in the process. Of the people who participate in polling, more than 50% need to support the final poll as is. So it'll just be one question on the final poll. It'll be like, do you support the final poll? And that's as a whole. Like tonight and at meeting 2, we'll go through device by device and do polling, but with the final, it'll be, do you support this plan as a whole? So it'll just be one question. And again, the criteria is that of the people who participate. So whereas the initial petition was based on the number of residents in the area, this is based on the number of people who who participate in polling. And of those people, more than 50% have to support the final plan. If it's, if I only get 4 people who participate and submit their final poll and it's split 50-50, the plan cannot go forward. It has to be more than 50%. So if there's enough support, we take the plan and the documentation, take it to Transportation Commission for their support, and then we also take it to City Council for final approval. If the project receives approval from City Council, they'll set a construction date. They'll determine and that just depends on budgeting for that season. Right now, our timeline looks like this. As I said, today's presentation recording, it'll be posted to the project website in the next week or two. We'll also create a summary of the polling questions that we ran through tonight and use that feedback to create our preliminary plan. I will also there will also be in the summary, there will also be like a discussion summary as well. That's usually just for any questions that were unanswered during the meeting. I will go back and I will go back to the Ann Arbor Public Schools and determine what their needs are on Mershon, and that'll also be included in the summary. Just because I know it came up and I didn't have an answer for it. Our meeting number 2, May 29th, again at 6 p.m. on Zoom. You'll have a self-guided tour packet sent to you prior to that. And hopefully, the weather will be nicer and hopefully you'll have a chance to be out and take a look at how the layout feels on Mershon with, feet on the ground there. After meeting 2, we'll finalize everything, and that final poll will be sent out no later than June 19th. You'll have until July 9th to submit your polling sheet, either by mail or submitting it online. Again, the requirement is that more than 50% of the people who participate in polling have to support it for it to move forward. Moving forward, we'll be going to Transportation Commission and City Council. Those dates are very ballpark. They're very general just because the meeting dates change often. Agenda changes often, but usually within a month or 2 of the final poll being tallied, we're able to get the traffic calming project on the City Council's agenda. And then lastly, this is just contact information. This is just the project website on there. If there are additional comments, questions, feedback, things that you think of later on that you need more time to mull over, please reach out to me. You can call or send an email. Oh, one last thing. If you would like to receive email notifications about mailing packages, please either send me an email or leave your email in the Q&A, and I'll make sure you're added onto that. And especially because the final poll, we publish the results on the project website, and we don't send out physical mailings once the final poll has been tallied. We send an email to those people who are on the email list, but the only other thing that we do is publish it on the public website. So I know sometimes people might be sitting around wondering like what happened with the final poll, expecting a mailer. But yes, if you want email notifications about things that are being sent out to you, reach out to me or leave your email in the Q&A. Lastly, please take note of the Wade Trim name and logo. I really do my best to make sure that our mailers are are very explicitly say that they're traffic calming. Because if I don't have city envelopes to send out, I also want to use our company's envelopes so that anything that's returned comes back to me directly. So I know sometimes I get people who say like, oh yeah, I threw it out because I didn't know what it was. So please just take note of our logo and just hopefully being involved in the meeting here that you're familiar with what to look for with traffic calming mailers. Um, I will launch that demographic survey again. If you didn't get a chance to fill it out prior to the meeting, please take a moment to do so now before you leave. Um, Again, this really doesn't have anything to do with traffic calming. It's just something that the city uses at all of their public engagement meetings just to help, improve outreach and things like that. If you have any additional questions, comments, or thoughts, I'll leave the meeting open for a few minutes. Otherwise, you can leave at any time. I just want to say thank you for your time. Thank you for participating in this process. I know it's not always fun to do something at the end of the day. If you had to work or if you had to do other things throughout the day, I know it's not always fun to drag it out a little longer, but I appreciate your time. I appreciate your care and interest in this project. Really, I do. It's all driven by residents. So with that being said, I'll stay on for a little bit, but if you don't have anything that you need to take care of, feel free to sign off and hopefully you enjoy the rest of your evening.